The howl pierced the night like a blade, freezing the blood in my veins. It wasn't the cry of any normal wolf. This was something ancient, something wrong. I stood paralyzed beside my crashed car, steam still hissing from the crumpled hood as rain pelted down through the towering pines of the Cascade Forest. My phone was dead, the road was deserted, and that sound came again, closer now. Was Benjamin Mercer, 32, wildlife photographer for Northwest Nature magazine. What I'm about to share with you sounds insane, but I swear on my life, what's left of it, that every word is true. 3 nights ago, I became prey in these woods, hunted by something that shouldn't exist. The assignment seemed routine. Document the endangered gray wolf population in the Willamette National Forest. A week alone in the wilderness, camping and tracking, I'd done it a dozen times before. But I'd never ventured this deep into the old-growth section locals called the Hollow. Stay on marked trails, the ranger had warned me at the checkpoint. Some folks go missing every year. The forest has a way of keeping them. I'd laugh then. I'm not laughing now. The storm hit without warning. My Jeep hydroplaned on a curve and slammed into an ancient oak. Not life-threatening, but the vehicle was finished. As I gathered what I could salvage, camera gear, emergency supplies, the satellite phone that refused to connect, I heard the first howl. Something moved at the edge of my headlight's dying glow. A massive shadow, too tall to be a standard wolf, disappeared into the trees. I told myself it was fear playing tricks, but deep in my gut, I knew better. With no other option, I shouldered my pack and followed the road, hoping to reach the ranger station before morning. The rain intensified, washing away the path until I wasn't sure if I was still on the road or wandering deeper into untamed forest. That's when I found the cabin. A dilapidated structure, it emerged from the darkness like a mirage. No lights, no smoke from the chimney, but shelter was shelter. I approached cautiously, calling out. No response. The door hung partially open, creaking on rusted hinges. The beam of my flashlight revealed a single room in disarray. Overturned furniture, shredded bedding. On the walls, hundreds of tally marks scratched into the wood. In the center of the floor lay a trap door, secured with heavy chains and a padlock that looked brand new. I should have left immediately. Instead, exhaustion and the worsening storm convinced me to stay. I barricaded the door with a heavy dresser and collapsed onto what remained of the bed. The scratching woke me hours later. Soft at first, then insistent, coming from beneath the floor. I froze, watching in horror as the chain on the trap door pulled taut with each new sound. Then silence fell, only to be replaced by a low, rumbling growl that seemed to fill the cabin. A voice, raspy, barely human, called from below. I can smell you up there. Fresh meat. Let me out and I'll make it quick. I bit back a scream. This couldn't be happening. The chains rattled violently as something powerful slammed against the door from below. The moon is full, stranger. I need to feed. The trapdoor splintered at its edges. I grabbed my pack and threw myself through the cabin's single window, glass shredding my jacket as I tumbled into the mud outside. Behind me, wood cracked and chains snapped with a sound like gunshots. I ran blindly into the forest as an inhuman roar of rage echoed from the cabin. The rain had stopped and moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting everything in silver and shadow. I splashed through a shallow creek, hoping the water would mask my scent. 50 yards into the trees, I dared to look back. It stood on the cabin's porch, a nightmare made flesh. 8 feet tall at least, with the general shape of a man, but covered in matted dark fur. Its snout was elongated, filled with gleaming teeth, and its eyes, God, its eyes were intelligent, calculating, and glowing amber in the darkness. Our gazes locked, and it smiled. A predator who knew its prey had nowhere to go. I won't bore you with details of my panicked flight through the woods. For hours it toyed with me, sometimes crashing through the underbrush directly behind, other times letting silence fall until I convinced myself I'd escaped, only to hear that bone-chilling howl from a new direction. Dawn was approaching when I stumbled upon the clearing with the stones. 7 massive boulders arranged in a perfect circle, covered in symbols I didn't recognize. At the center stood a rough altar of sorts, stained dark with what could only be decades of dried blood. I heard a twig snap behind me and spun around. The beast stood at the edge of the clearing, no longer running. It walked upright, moving with a terrible grace. "You've led me on quite a chase," it said, its voice a guttural perversion of human speech. "Most don't make it this far." "What are you?" I managed to ask, backing toward the altar. It tilted its head, almost curious. "You really don't know?" "The locals call us skinwalkers. The old tribes had different names, but I prefer the classic. Werewolf has such a delightful ring to it, don't you think?" "You can't be real," I whispered. "And yet, here we are." It gestured around the clearing. "My ancestors have hunted in these woods for centuries. This land remembers us, powers us." It stepped closer, moonlight gleaming on curved claws. "And right now, it demands sacrifice." I braced myself for death, but a flicker of movement at the clearing's edge caught my attention. Another shape emerged from the trees, then another. Wolves. Real wolves, their gray fur silvered by moonlight. They formed a semicircle behind the werewolf, growling low. The creature turned, suddenly uncertain. "No!" it snarled. "This one is mine!" The largest wolf launched itself at the werewolf's throat. The others followed, a coordinated attack that drove the monster back. Blood and fur flew as the werewolf fought with terrifying strength, snapping one wolf's spine with a casual swipe. I didn't wait to see the outcome. I ran again, the sounds of the battle fading behind me. Somehow I found the road just as the first hint of dawn brightened the eastern sky. A logging truck spotted me, the driver's face showing shock at my bloodied, wild appearance. I told him I'd crashed my car, gotten lost. A normal explanation. Who would believe the truth? But as he drove me towards civilization, I saw it one last time, standing on a ridge overlooking the highway. Even at this distance, I could feel its eyes on me, its promise. This isn't over. The authorities found no trace of the cabin when I led them back. The clearing with its stone circle had vanished as well. They attributed my wild story to concussion and exposure. Perhaps they're right. But 3 nights have passed, and tonight is another full moon. I've barricaded myself in this motel room, windows sealed, doors blocked. Because twice now I've glimpsed a tall figure watching from the tree line across the street. And an hour ago my phone received a text from an unknown number. "The hunt continues, Benjamin. No one escapes my forest forever." Wait, did you hear that? A scratching at the window? It's found me. Oh God, The story I've just shared is but the beginning of my nightmare. A nightmare that has stretched across months now as I've tried to escape what hunts me. Let me continue. The motel window shattered as massive claws tore through the cheap frame. I barely escaped through the bathroom window, leaving behind everything except the clothes on my back and the journal where I documented my experience. For 3 weeks, I moved constantly. Bus stations, cheap hotels, always pushing further from Oregon. I reached as far as Denver before the signs appeared again. Claw marks on my motel room door, the distinctive howl in the distance. It was tracking me across state lines. I abandoned technology completely. No phone, no credit cards, nothing that could leave a digital trail. I paid cash for a used car and drove south, sleeping in the vehicle at rest stops, never staying anywhere for more than a few hours. In a small New Mexico library, I researched werewolf lore obsessively. Most was Hollywood nonsense, but certain threads appeared consistently in ancient accounts. Their connection to specific territories, their immortality unless killed by silver, their need to hunt during the full moon. The legends spoke of werewolves as territorial predators, rarely leaving their hunting grounds. So why was this one following me so relentlessly? My answer came in Albuquerque. Exhausted, I finally checked into a real motel, needing a proper night's sleep. I woke to find a crude symbol scratched into the bedside table, the same markings I'd seen on those stones in the forest clearing. Below it, words written in what looked horribly like dried blood. "You took something of mine, Benjamin. I want it back." I fled again, but the message haunted me. What had I taken? I had nothing from that night except the journal. I flipped through its pages desperately, examining every item I'd documented. And then I saw it, stuck between two pages, a small leather pouch I'd found near the altar in the clearing. I'd absent-mindedly pocketed it during my escape. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside was a yellowed human tooth attached to a leather cord, and what looked like a clump of coarse fur bound with copper wire. Some kind of talisman. That night in a truck stop bathroom, I tried to destroy it. The tooth shattered easily, but when I attempted to burn the fur, the flames turned an unnatural blue. The smell made me retch, like burning hair and rotting meat combined. More disturbing, as the fur blackened, I could have sworn I heard a distant scream of pain. 2 days later, I found claw marks on my car. Deeper, more frenzied than before. The message was clear. I had heard it somehow, and its rage had only intensified. I drove west again, drawn back toward Oregon almost against my will. Something told me this would only end where it began. As I crossed back into the state, strange dreams plagued me whenever I managed to sleep. In them, I saw through the creature's eyes as it ran through moonlit forests. I felt its hunger, its hatred, but also something else. Fear. It feared me now. Outside Bend, Oregon, I encountered an elderly native man at a gas station. He watched me with unusual intensity as I refueled my car. When I met his gaze, he simply said, "It's marked you, hasn't it?" The shock must have shown on my face. He introduced himself as Joseph, a tribal elder, and invited me to his home. Desperation overcame caution, and I followed. Over strong black tea, Joseph explained what I'd stumbled into. The creature was called Shandin Yaji in his language, Little Sunlight, a man from his tribe who, 2 centuries ago, had made a bargain with a forest spirit for immortality and power, in exchange for providing regular sacrifices. The talisman you found was his bond to the forest, Joseph told me. It contains his original human tooth from before his transformation and fur from his first change. By burning part of it, you've weakened him. He can be killed now. With silver, I asked. Joseph shook his head. Hollywood nonsense. He can be killed if you complete the destruction of the talisman at the place of his transformation, the stone circle, and then take his life by any means while he's vulnerable. I had become the hunter. Joseph gave me what help he could, a map marking the probable location of the stone circle based on tribal histories, and an ancient knife he claimed had been used to fight such creatures before, but he refused to accompany me. "This is your hunt now," he said. "You started it when you took his talisman." The Willamette Forest felt different as I entered it again. Darker, watching. I abandoned my car miles from where Joseph's map indicated the stone circle would be. The final approach would be on foot, at night, when the creature would be in its werewolf form. Only then would the destruction of the talisman fully affect it. The full moon rose as I hiked through increasingly dense forest. Several times I heard movement in the underbrush, regular wolves perhaps, or other nighttime predators. I clutched Joseph's knife, a crude iron blade with symbols etched along its length. Around midnight, I found the clearing again. Exactly where Joseph had predicted. The stone circle stood unchanged, moonlight reflecting off the dark stains on the central altar. I removed the remains of the talisman from my pocket, the copper wire and the half-burned clump of fur. A howl rose from directly behind me. I spun to see the werewolf emerging from the trees. It looked diminished somehow. The fur was patchy, its massive frame slightly stooped, but the gleaming amber eyes held the same malevolence. "You should have kept running, Benjamin," it growled. "I might have made your death quick before. Now I'll make you suffer." It charged. I dove aside, rolling toward the altar. The creature was fast but seemed to favor its left side, a weakness from the partial destruction of the talisman. I scrambled onto the altar and held up the remains. "This ends tonight," I said, with far more courage than I felt. Its eyes widened with something approaching fear. "Wait!" I dropped the talisman onto the blood-stained stone and plunged Joseph's knife through it. A sound like thunder without sound pulsed through the clearing. The werewolf collapsed to its knees, a terrible scream tearing from its throat, half wolf, half human. Before my eyes, its form flickered, the monstrous shape intermittently revealing a gaunt, wild-eyed man beneath. The transformation wasn't complete. It was caught between forms, vulnerable just as Joseph had promised. I raised the knife again and approached. The creature looked up at me, hatred and desperation in its gaze. "You don't understand what you're doing," it gasped, voice shifting between growl and human speech. "I'm the guardian. Without me, it will wake." "What will wake?" I demanded. It laughed, a horrible sound. "Something far worse than me. Why do you think I needed sacrifices? To keep it sleeping?" I hesitated. Was this a trick? The creature seized my moment of doubt to lunge forward, claws extended for my throat. I reacted instinctively, driving the knife upward. The blade sank into its chest. A look of surprise crossed its features as it fell against me. I pushed it back, watching as black blood pulsed around the embedded knife. "You've doomed them all," it whispered, its form now shifting rapidly between man and beast. "The hunger in the earth, it will rise now." With a final shudder, it collapsed. The body seemed to age rapidly, decades passing in seconds until nothing remained but dust and matted fur. The knife clattered to the blood-stained ground. A low rumble shook the clearing. The ground between the stone circle began to crack, dirt and leaves sliding into a widening darkness below. The rumbling intensified, and a fetid odor rose from the growing pit, like meat left too long in summer heat. I backed away as something moved in the darkness below. Something massive. The trees around the clearing began to wither, their leaves blackening and falling as if autumn had come in an instant. I ran. Behind me, the rumbling grew to a roar. The forest seemed to bend away from the clearing as I fled through the trees, branches reaching out as if to speed my escape, or perhaps to grope for fresh prey. 3 days later, forest fires broke out across the Willamette National Forest. The authorities called it unprecedented, 5 separate blazes that converged on the same remote area. By the time they were contained, over 50,000 acres had burned, including the entire region where the stone circle had stood. The fires claimed 9 lives, 5 firefighters and 4 hikers who couldn't be evacuated in time. News reports described the fire's behavior as erratic and almost purposeful. I know better. Whatever woke beneath that clearing, whatever the werewolf had been appeasing with its sacrifices, had emerged, and the forest burned to contain it. I've relocated to the East Coast now, as far from Oregon as I can manage. Sometimes I dream of that pit in the forest floor, of what might have glimpsed moving within it. I wake drenched in sweat, certain that I've heard scratching at my window or door. So far, it's just dreams. But yesterday, I found a news article about unusual animal attacks near the burned section of Willamette Forest. Livestock mutilated in ways that defy conventional predator behavior. 3 hikers missing, and a local woman reported seeing a large, upright, wolf-like creature watching her home from the forest edge. It's starting again, but this time it's not just one werewolf. I don't know if what I unleashed can be stopped, but I've contacted Joseph again, and tomorrow I fly back to Oregon. The hunt continues, but the roles have reversed once more. If you're reading this and you find yourself in the forests of Oregon, stay on marked paths. Don't hike at night. And if you hear howling that raises the hair on your neck and freezes your blood, run. Don't look back, because it's not just wolves in those woods anymore. 6 months have passed since my return to Oregon. 6 months of hunting what I released. There's not just one werewolf now, there are 7. The original creature's final words make sense now. It had been containing something ancient by channeling its power into a single vessel, itself. When I killed it, that power dispersed, finding new hosts. Joseph and I have tracked down and destroyed 3 of them so far. Each death has required the same elements: a specially prepared talisman and a confrontation at one of the 7 stone circles hidden throughout the forest. We discovered that these circles form a larger pattern, a containment seal of sorts for whatever lies beneath the forest. The werewolves protect these circles fiercely. Each one we've killed has warned of something worse awakening if all 7 werewolves are destroyed. Joseph believes they're lying, creatures desperate to preserve their immortality. But I'm not so certain. After our 3rd kill, earthquakes began around Mount Jefferson. minor tremors officially attributed to volcanic activity, but they occur most strongly during the full moon. 2 nights ago, we tracked the 4th werewolf to its territory near Waldo Lake. Unlike the others, this one wasn't alone. It had created a pack of sorts, ordinary wolves that it controlled somehow. We were forced to retreat, Joseph suffering deep claw wounds to his shoulder. As we hid in an abandoned fire watchtower, waiting for dawn, Joseph finally told me the full legend of what sleeps beneath these forests. The tribal stories speak of a time before humans, when elder things ruled the land. One such entity, a hunger-given form, was imprisoned deep beneath what would become Oregon, bound by 7 guardians. Over centuries, the guardians became corrupt, transforming from protectors into predators. They became the first werewolves, using the power they were meant to contain for their own purposes, requiring human sacrifices to maintain their immortality. The one you killed in the stone circle was the last of the original 7, Joseph explained. When it died, the power sought new vessels. But these new werewolves don't understand their true purpose. They only know hunger and rage. "And if we kill them all?" I asked. Joseph's expression was grim. "Then nothing remains to channel the entity's power. It will rise. So we've been making a mistake." The realization hit me like ice water. "We should have left them alone." "No," Joseph said firmly. "The original guardians failed in their duty long ago. These new vessels are abominations with no control. We must find another way to contain what sleeps below." That other way led us to our current desperate plan. Ancient tribal texts speak of a ritual to bind the entity once more. Not to werewolf guardians, but to the land itself. The ceremony requires blood sacrifice at each of the 7 stone circles during a lunar eclipse. The eclipse comes tomorrow night. We've prepared the first 4 circles already, cleansing them of the werewolf taint. But 3 circles remain, each guarded by an increasingly aware and organized werewolf. Joseph doubts we'll succeed. I caught him writing letters to his grandchildren this morning, a man preparing for his end. I write this now in what may be my final entry. If we fail tomorrow, the entity may fully awaken. If that happens, the devastation will spread far beyond these forests. If anyone finds this journal, the binding ritual is detailed on the final pages. It may be needed again someday, if any survive what's coming. The sun is setting. Joseph has prepared the ritual materials. We move out within the hour. May whatever gods still listen grant us strength for what comes next. It's done. 3 days have passed since the eclipse. I'm writing this from a hospital bed in Portland, tubes and monitors attached to my broken body. The doctors say it's a miracle I survived. They've diagnosed me with severe trauma and hallucinations. Let them think what they will. I know what happened in those woods. We reached the 5th stone circle just as the moon began to darken. The werewolf was waiting, a female with russet fur and calculating eyes. She didn't attack immediately, instead attempting to convince us to abandon our plan. "The hunger below grows stronger with each binding you break," she said. "Already it reaches toward the surface. If you destroy us all, nothing will stop its awakening." Joseph began the ritual anyway, casting a mixture of herbs and his own blood onto the central altar. The werewolf howled in rage and charge. I met her with Joseph's knife, now stained black from previous kills. The fight was brutal. She was faster than the others, more controlled. Her claws opened my chest before I managed to drive the knife into her throat. As she died, the earth shook violently. Trees toppled around us as a fissure opened near the stone circle. Joseph completed the ritual as I stemmed my bleeding with strips torn from my shirt. The 5th circle was cleansed, but my wounds were severe. Joseph insisted I continue with him to the 6th circle, despite my injuries. "We finish this tonight," he said, helping me limp through the forest. "Or we die trying." The 6th circle was eerily empty when we arrived. No werewolf guardian, no sign of resistance. Joseph grew suspicious, working quickly to prepare the ritual components. As the eclipse reached totality, casting the forest in an unnatural twilight, we realized the trap. Not 1 but 2 werewolves emerged from the darkness. Brothers, judging by their similar features despite their bestial forms. They moved in perfect coordination, one engaging Joseph while the other circled toward me. I was too weak from blood loss to put up much fight. The creature slammed me against one of the stone monoliths, ribs cracking under the impact. Through a haze of pain, I saw Joseph complete the ritual, flinging the sacrificial materials onto the altar just before the second werewolf tore into him. Joseph died there in that clearing, his sacrifice enabling the sixth binding. 5 stone circles cleansed, 2 remaining, and I was alone now, barely conscious. The werewolves turned toward me, but before they could finish what they'd started, the ground heaved beneath us. The eclipse had reached its peak, and something was happening. The stones of the circle began to glow with an inner light, symbols appearing on their surfaces that hadn't been visible before. The werewolves howled in pain, their forms flickering as the moonlight completely vanished. In that moment of weakness, I gathered the last of my strength and lunged, driving Joseph's knife into the chest of the nearest creature. It collapsed, its brother roaring in rage and grief. The surviving werewolf fled into the forest as the eclipse began to wane. I dragged myself to Joseph's body, retrieved his bag of ritual components, and made the hardest decision of my life. There was still 1 circle left. The binding would remain incomplete without it. Despite my injuries, I stumbled through the forest toward where the final stone circle should be, following the crude map Joseph had marked. Each step was agony, blood soaking my clothing and leaving a trail behind me. I knew the final werewolf would be waiting, and in my condition, I stood no chance in a direct confrontation. Dawn was breaking as I reached the 7th circle. Unlike the others, this one stood in a small clearing atop a ridge overlooking the valley. The stones were smaller here, weathered by centuries of wind and rain. The werewolf sat on the central altar, waiting. In the growing light, it appeared almost peaceful, a massive furred figure with intelligent eyes tracking my approach. It had made no move to disguise its presence or ambush me. "You're dying," it observed as I collapsed at the edge of the circle. "And yet you came anyway." I couldn't speak, could barely remain conscious. The creature tilted its head, studying me. "I've watched you hunt my kin," it continued. "You believe you're saving people, but the hunger below is ancient beyond your comprehension. The 7 of us barely contained a fraction of its power. Without proper guardians, your binding ritual is a temporary measure at best." With trembling hands, I began preparing the final components of the ritual. The werewolf made no move to stop me. "You wonder why I don't kill you?" it asked. "Because I've seen what stirs below. I've felt its mind touching mine, and I fear it far more than death." The creature stood and approached me. I raised Joseph's knife weakly, but it gently pushed my hand aside. "The ritual requires blood freely given at the 7th circle," it said. "Your friend knew this. It's why he sent you ahead while he faced my brothers." The werewolf extended its arm, offering a clawed hand. "My blood carries the power of the original guardians. Use it to complete your binding." I hesitated, suspecting a trick, but the earthquake that suddenly rocked the ridge decided for me. In the valley below, a massive fissure opened in the earth, steam and noxious gases venting into the dawn sky. Something vast moved in the darkness of that crevice. The werewolf slashed its own wrist, black blood welling from the wound. "Complete your ritual, Hunter, before it's too late for us all." I mixed its blood with the remaining components and dragged myself to the altar. As I poured the mixture onto the ancient stone, the werewolf began chanting in a language I didn't recognize. The words seemed to vibrate in the air, physical things that made my vision blur. The stones of the circle ignited with blue fire that burned without heat. The ground shook more violently than before, and I was thrown from my feet. The last thing I saw before consciousness left me was the werewolf standing over me, its form shifting, diminishing into that of an ordinary man as the ritual completed. I awoke 3 days later in the hospital. Forest rangers had found me near death on the ridge, they said. No sign of anyone else, though they mentioned unusual seismic activity throughout the region had triggered a massive search and rescue operation. The earthquakes have stopped. The fissures have closed. Whatever stirred beneath the forest has returned to its slumber, bound once more, not by corrupted guardians, but by the land itself. But I don't believe it's over. In my dreams, I still feel it moving beneath the earth, testing its bonds. The ritual we completed was powerful, but the entity is patient. It has waited centuries before. It can wait again. As for the surviving werewolf, the one who helped me complete the ritual, I've seen no sign of him. With the entity bound differently now, I wonder if he remains transformed or has returned fully to human form. Tomorrow I'll be discharged from the hospital. My first stop will be Joseph's home to tell his family of his sacrifice. After that, I don't know. Part of me wants to run as far from Oregon as possible, but another part knows I might be needed again someday when the bonds weaken. The hunger below sleeps for now, but for how long? 3 years have passed since the events in Willamette Forest. I've settled in Joseph's former home at his family's insistence, taking up his mantle as a protector of sorts. His grandson, Michael, has become my apprentice, learning the old ways and the truth about what sleeps beneath these mountains. The binding has held, though there are troubling signs. The forest has changed near the stone circles, plants growing in unusual patterns, animals behaving oddly. Hikers occasionally report disorientation and lost time in certain areas. Small earthquakes still occur during full moons. Most concerning are the dreams. Michael has them too. Visions of something vast stirring in darkness, reaching tendrils of influence upward. The entity may be bound, but its consciousness still touches the world above. We've established a monitoring network of sorts. Joseph had connections with other tribal elders across the Pacific Northwest who knew fragments of the old stories. Together, we maintain a watch over the stone circles and track unusual occurrences throughout the region. Last month, a hiker disappeared near the third stone circle. The official search found nothing, but Michael and I discovered unusual tracks, not werewolf, but not entirely human either. Something new hunts in these forests, something that might be the entity's attempt to create new guardians, or perhaps vessels for its eventual return. I've resumed my photography work as cover for our monitoring activities. My editors think I'm documenting wildlife recovery after the forest fires. In reality, I'm cataloging changes in the ecosystem that might indicate weakening in the binding. The surviving werewolf, the one who helped complete the ritual, reappeared 6 months ago. Now fully human, he introduced himself as Thomas, a forest ranger who'd been transformed 5 years earlier. He remembers everything from his time as a werewolf and has joined our watch. Thomas believes the entity is already finding ways to circumvent the binding. It's more intelligent than we realized, he told me recently. The original guardians underestimated it. I felt its mind when I was connected to it. It thinks in centuries, plans in millennia. We've begun researching older bindings, hoping to find a more permanent solution. Thomas has access to records from early European explorers who encountered similar phenomena in other parts of the world. Some of their accounts suggest the entity beneath Oregon isn't unique, that similar ancients sleep under mountains and forests worldwide. Most troubling was a journal we discovered in the university archives from a 19th century expedition. It described convergence points where the barriers between our world and another dimension grow thin. The stone circles in Oregon mark one such convergence, a doorway of sorts that the entity used to enter our world eons ago. If true, we can never truly destroy it, only maintain the barriers keeping it contained. This has become our mission now, not to eliminate the threat, but to become the new guardians, passing knowledge to the next generation. 2 weeks ago, during the winter solstice, all 7 stone circles activated simultaneously, the symbols etched in their surfaces glowing blue in the darkness. Michael, Thomas, and I witnessed this at the main circle. The ground didn't shake, but we all felt a presence stirring beneath our feet, testing its bonds. We've accelerated our preparations since then. Thomas is training a small group of trusted individuals who might become a new generation of guardians. Not corrupted werewolves feeding on human sacrifice, but conscious protectors who understand what's at stake. I sometimes wonder if we're repeating the cycle that created the werewolves in the first place. Will these new guardians eventually become corrupted too? Is this entity's true power not its physical might, but its ability to twist its jailers over time? For now, we maintain our watch. I've cached copies of my journals in multiple locations, ensuring this knowledge won't be lost if something happens to me. Michael has memorized the binding ritual, as have 3 others. Last night I returned to the cabin where this all began. The place where I first encountered the werewolf that had been imprisoned below. The structure had been rebuilt recently, though no record of construction permits existed in county records. Inside I found the familiar trapdoor in the floor, secured with new chains. On the walls were fresh tally marks, hundreds of them meticulously carved into the wood. A warning system of some kind, counting down to... what? As I stood there, I felt eyes watching me from the surrounding forest. Not hostile, but vigilant. I left a copy of my journal on the cabin's table before departing. Knowledge for whoever might come after me. This morning I received a package. No return address, no note inside. Just a small leather pouch containing a yellowed human tooth and a clump of coarse fur bound with copper wire. The cycle continues. The watch must be maintained. The hunger below sleeps, but its dreams touch our world. And one day it will wake again.